Hello and welcome everyone to Masters of Pen and Paper. This podcast features two best friends talking about the world of tabletop RPGs. We're going to talk about game systems, specific rules, interesting facts that you may or may not be aware of. Since this is our first episode, we wanted to start with something easy that most people would know about, so we chose 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And I just would like to personally thank you for choosing this podcast to listen to. I know there's lots out there and we're glad that you're here. So without further ado, let's do this.
Finny and DG lead the way. New RPG systems every day. Dice roll, quick adventure calls. Walking through tabletop's golden halls. Masters of pen and paper. RPGs of every flavor. Talking about different creators. The choice of games is never greater. Come with us to games they run through. New, old, and interesting. Thank you all for listening.
Welcome in to the first, the inaugural episode of Masters of Pen and Paper podcast. My name is Micah, or aka DG, and this is my main man,
Finny, right here.
Oh man, we got Finny in a podcast. This is it. This is your internet debut. I don't know how you feel about that, because up to this point you've kind of just been jumping in on stuff, but now you're in it. Now you're official.
I am terrified. Now the world will hear me for all that I am.
Now the internet will be rocked.
All of my poor grammar and everything. Yeah.
Not even a little bit. Welcome in. Thank you for downloading or listening to this episode. The basic premise of this, we've been talking about building podcasts for a long time, right? And so the basic premise of this podcast is to explore the world of tabletop RPGs in its wide array of choices. There are endless RPGs that are out there, all shapes and sizes and kinds and systems and whatever you'd call it.
Flavors?
Plethora. Could you call it flavors?
Flavors. Definitely flavors, because there are all sorts of different systems, and from the systems, there's all sorts of different genres of those systems, and it's just, we thought we would do something that would kind of bring to light the general scope of everything, right?
Exactly. So yeah, and I mean, and coming from us, we both have a large kind of background in tabletop RPGs. I've been playing D&D. I've been officially playing D&D from 4th edition, but I have been playing, let's call it D&D adjacent from 2nd edition, Baldur's Gate, some of those games that came out, the ones that kind of reference the D&D rules, but a literal pen and paper, miniatures on the table, rolling D20s. I entered the world in D&D 4th edition. I think you did too.
I did not.
Ooh, earlier.
I entered. You actually were my first ever DM. You popped my tabletop cherry.
Poor bastard.
And I actually started with 5th edition.
Oh, that's right. So
yeah.
you were 4th edition adjacent, because I remember we were playing a game. You were down the one time, and I was like, "Hey, why don't you check this out while we're playing this?"
Right. Yeah.
Watching, and that was 4th edition. And so yeah. But I mean, since then, I mean, and we're also talking that's like circa 2006, 2007 at this point, right?
Yes.
Way
2000,
back.
2010.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Anyways, I did pick up the 3 main books when they dropped on for 5th edition as they came out, basically. So,
right,
we were in the on the cutting edge of D&D, as it were.
For sure. Yeah, it's 5th edition was really awesome, and that is where we found ourselves with our largest running group, right? Like the group that we're playing with now. We've been playing religiously every single Sunday. Essentially, we've been playing D&D with this group since 2019 for me, that I jumped in, and then you came in
2020 or 2021. Yeah,
it would have been right around there.
Yeah,
and then since then, right? And this is we're currently in the longest break with that group that we've ever had.
which is running about 3 weeks now.
Which is about 3 weeks, and I'm starting to be like, "You got any more of them D20?"
I gotta roll some dice just on the side.
I gotta roll. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, while we haven't been around since the dawn of Dungeons and Dragons, I think what we do bring to the table is that kind of current generation D&D experience, and flavored with, you know, the history, right? Because this is where the podcast came about. Is you're somebody who dives in deep to these systems, right? Like you go out there. So I'm the Dungeons and Dragons guy, and you're like, yeah, but what about Pirate Borg? What about Morkborg? What about Traveler? And you're like, here's all these systems. I'm like, dude, I've never heard of half of these things before. And you're like, well, you should have.
No, not that you should have. It's just that there's so much more than just D&D out there.
Right.
And D&D is what got me into. Now I'm an avid collector of everything tabletop.
Just hook it to my veins.
Oh,
just give me some more.
A fresh new rule book is just, oh God, please more.
Absolutely.
I have been very interested in that since particularly a certain event that happened with Wizards of the Coast. But that I was also interested in it before that. It just exponentially expedited the process of me picking up different stuff.
Totally. Would you have, off the top of your head, because don't go and count them, but off the top of your head, would you have an idea of roughly how many of these platforms that you're currently in possession of, like right now?
Physically, I've got 3.
Okay.
And then digitally, I have closer to 30.
There you go. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like it's amazing when we're talking about the systems, and like I'm like, oh, this is really cool how D&D does this thing. You're like, right, but in Dungeon Crawl Classics, they do it like this, and this is a thing that's inside of that system, and I'm like, that's crazy. Why wouldn't that be in 5th edition? And ultimately led to this, right? Why we wanted to have this type of a conversation.
Yeah. And we want it to be we're not bashing on anything, or we're not promoting anything. We're just laying out stuff.
Exactly. Is there truly and honestly a bad tabletop RPG that's out there? Really? Like,
no.
if you've got a group of people around a table and you're playing insert system here, even the worst of the worst is still better than nothing, I think.
At the end of the day, if you're having fun playing it, then it's a good system.
There it is. Podcast over. Nice and simple. No, I'm just kidding.
No. There's certain systems do things better than other systems, and it's just that as long as you're having fun doing it, there's no yucking yums, right? I mean,
100%.
You want to play D&D, okay. You want to play Pathfinder, good. You want to play Morkborg, awesome. If you want to play Fate Core, go for it. Like all these things, it's all personal preference.
100%. Yeah, and I mean, and that is the bonus of it. I think each one of these systems is pretty easy to find your crew that is interested in it. Luckily for us, we have a group that's interested in wide variety of things. So if we really wanted to throw a game down, we could easily rope at least 3 or 4 people together to fill a table out and get them to learn the rules and actually come to the table ready to go.
For sure, we could get the quote unquote full party going. Because our D&D party is more or less 2 parties combined into one.
That's right, exactly. And heavy on the DMs. So
heavy on the DMs. We are an anomaly among the tabletop genre.
There is no forever DM at our table. We have many, which is maybe why the group has lasted as long as it actually has, because you're able to take a break, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that was kind of the concept. So
that's what we're trying to talk about here. Yeah.
These podcasts are all going to surround basically around all things tabletop RPG, and in this case, we're specifically talking about this specific series in which we're talking about core rule sets. So we got to start at the beginning, right? We've got to start with, let's talk about these systems, because you may not even know that they exist, for one.
Right.
And allow us to give you a real high level crash course on what that system is, how it works, things that are cool about it, things that you might want to watch out for.
Yeah,
that kind of idea.
The stuff that works really well for that system, and the stuff that doesn't work so well for that system. There's buzzwords thrown around like rules light and tactical combat,
dungeon
and all
crawler,
this, all this stuff,
RP heavy.
and we'll get into all that stuff as we come in across them. And we're just trying to throw the education out there.
Yeah, we're bringing a torch down into the deep dark dungeon to illuminate games that exist outside of Dungeons and Dragons.
So basically my hard drive.
There it is. Yes, we're just shining that flashlight on there. And so we figured, since we're talking about this kind of core series, talking about the rule sets, the best way to kind of set the stage would be to start with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. This 5th edition is kind of coming to its end. I realized that, like, we're at, what would we call it? Like a 5.5 with the D&D 1 that's coming out, right? Like, the world of D&D 5e is shortening if it's not already closing.
It's transforming more than anything right now, especially if they're going to a 5.5 because of certain falling outs and lawsuits going on. We don't need to get into that stuff. We're not about the politics. That
sounds like another episode. That sounds like another episode.
But and before all of that happened, I think Wizards of the Coast was trying to distance themselves from other things, right?
Yeah.
So then they have to retcon, or not retcon, but remaster some of their stuff to make it more compliant with where they are going.
Exactly.
That's all them. I mean, 5e had a good run. I mean, 5e originally started out, the public playtest started in 2012, right?
Right.
So, and didn't release till, 2014?
I believe so. Yeah, it was 2 years. And we were talking about that a little bit before we started recording here. And so I was saying to Finny, like, I was part of that D&D Next. So I was deep into my 4th edition campaign when D&D Next was announced. And so I signed up to be a playtester because it was just an open packet. You just went to the website, you signed up for it. They sent you PDFs. And then you would go back and you would download the latest iteration of it, right? There was many iterations of these rule sets.
Right.
And it changed a lot over from the start of that playtest to the finalized version, like what we got as the quote-unquote like SRD 5e, the basic rule set. It changed quite a bit in between that. And it was really cool to see the iterations as that happened. As well, it was really cool to be able to play it. Now, I will say it was wildly different from what we were doing with 4th edition. And it felt like I was like, oh no, we're gonna have to do all this work to learn how to use this new system. And it's funny because at 5th edition, this has happened multiple times up to this point, right? I think back to the folks that were in 3rd edition moving to 3.5, having the exact same thing. Yeah. From 1st edition to 2nd edition, 2nd edition to 3rd edition, right? Like all of these different iterations, you have the kind of same peak and valley, like, oh, we're not changing. And then those folks, the grognards, they'll stay behind on 1st edition. We're not moving to 2nd edition. This is what we're happy with. And we're not moving. And then the rest of the world moves on. I think 5th edition owes a lot of its popularity to programs like Critical Role, Dimension 20, these large scale Hollywood level
and
things that came out.
Not to mention the popular Netflix show Stranger Things.
Stranger Things also
they saw them
D&D.
playing D&D, so everybody went out and got D&D. Well,
which is really funny because in Stranger Things they're not playing 5th edition.
No,
D&D.
They're playing 2nd edition.
Yeah, like they're doing proper, like they're doing old school D&D,
but
right?
You can't go out and buy the books for that anymore.
That's
so you
right.
get the next best thing, which is 5th edition.
Exactly.
Which isn't bad.
No.
it's different is all.
Yes, it's wildly different from there. I mean, as a couple of guys who have been playing 5th edition solid for the last 5 years now, like like I said, every single Sunday, it is not a bad game. If anything, I would say that it is if the scale's from 0 to 10, it's the 5, right? Like it's literally straight down the center. You're going to have a fun time, but it's also trumped by systems that do it better, that may have a higher risk reward. There's not a lot of risk reward with 5th edition, right?
So, do you want to know why?
Hit me with it.
That was by design.
Yes.
They designed it to be easy to pick up for new players to learn and play.
Correct.
And they left a lot of room for the experienced GM or DM to homebrew and make their own things work with it. It's customizable. It's a pretty robust system. It's pretty hard to break.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and the thing with 5th is that because of those decisions, everything kind of feels like it has, styrofoam padding on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I ran the campaign that I just finished off here, had this like epic final battle with this essentially elder orb level beholder.
Yeah.
And it should have wiped the floor with the party, but because of the way that the system works, it didn't.
It
right?
didn't.
It wasn't a simple fight, but it also wasn't like took 4 out of the 8 people down kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right? Like
yeah.
And so you can really see it in situations like that. The other thing that I've noticed too is with their official what do you call it? Their official like adventure books, right?
Their campaigns.
Their campaign books are not fun.
Yes and no.
They require the right DM and a significant amount of like shifting and changing
exactly
in order to make them fun to play. Otherwise it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, they're the 5. Like it's just straight down the center.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot coming at you from there.
They took the lethality of 1st and 2nd edition, where I mean, you walk into a trap, you're dead. There's no coming 100%. Back. There's no dodging it. There's no nothing. No. They implemented a lot of things that really made the characters survive all of their ordeals and become true heroes.
Right.
For instance, they 5th edition implemented the advantage-disadvantage mechanic. Right. Which was not a thing that happened in any of the previous
that was brand
iterations. New. Yeah. Which is really cool. So with the advantage, I guess we'll break it down.
Let's jump into some of the specifics. Yeah, the mechanics.
So D&D is based off of a D20 system. So you got your D20, which is a 20-sided dice. It's numbered 1 through 20. You roll that dice. Whatever number has to beat the DC or the difficulty challenge of the number that the DM decides or is told what it is. And advantage disadvantage gives you either 2 rolls. Well, it gives you 2 rolls, and you get to either pick the higher or the higher for advantage or the lower for disadvantage, in which that was unheard of at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it essentially doubles or halves your chances, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about when you're talking math, right? The D20 is a perfect example because every number is worth 5%. So as you go up to 10, you're at 50%. As you go up to 20, you're at 100%, and then 5% down, etc. Right? Throwing in an additional D20 now doubles or halves the result chance.
Yeah.
So it can be absolutely punishing if you're stuck at disadvantage for specific rolls, right?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Like a cleric or fighter class rolling a dexterity save with disadvantage, that's going to be a hard time. You're going to have a rough go with that one.
Your ranger trying to shoot his bow at the guy standing within 5 feet of him, like that's very hard to do.
You're gonna have a tough go.
Yeah. And that also part of the mechanics is, so you got your D20, you got your other various dice for your damages. You have a D100 for your percentile rolls, which doesn't get used as often as I would like to.
I was gonna say they don't really throw the percentage. The percentage dice I find in D&D 5 is typically used for like roll on the chart, roll on the table type of
It's for looting,
things.
yeah, mostly.
Yeah, like I find that the GM uses percentile significantly more than the players do by default, right? As a DM, I will ask players to throw percentage dice regularly, because I find that oftentimes it's like they'll ask something and I don't have something for that, but I'm open to it. I'm like, okay, roll percentage. If it beats such and such percentage, then sure, there's something here.
And that's part of the agency to the DM. To be able to, on the fly, just say, hey, yeah, sure, you want to loot the goblin's tooth, sure. Roll percentiles for pulling his tooth out without breaking it.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a 50-50 chance, or 70-30, or whatever, right?
For sure. Yeah, something else that shifted to with 5th edition was the proficiency bonus. Proficiency bonus was set to specific like skills, weapons, items, etc.
Right.
But in 5th, you get an overall.
Yeah, it's
like as you level up, you get a proficiency
connected to
bonus.
your level. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was something that they had changed as well in this edition, which I think was a good idea as well. It's streamlined a lot of things. It took a lot of the calculations and math out of the picture.
It did.
But again, it also just like it like flattened the bell curve a little bit.
I was going to say it rounded off all of the characters the exact same. So you don't have, well, I mean, you still have certain characters that are very good at things, like
for sure.
So for those of you who don't know, a skill check is there's 23 skills to
something like that.
Something like that are specific to certain classes, are really good at them. Certain classes are not. Like a thief is really good at sleight of hand or hide or stealth rolls. Wizard is good at arcana. And you basically roll again your D20 and try and beat adding in modifiers and stuff and doing math, and then beating your DC that the DM sets.
Right.
And that's also really weird because the DM sets the DC in 90% of all cases. It's never like for doing such and such, it's a DC 10. No, it's up to the DM's discretion as to what is a difficult task.
Yeah. Yeah, like the rule books give you suggestions. They're like, if you're breaking down a door, here's the breakdown of DCs, but it's not saying every wooden door is DC 10.
Yeah,
it says your average run-of-the-mill wooden door is DC 10. But you as the DM might say, this door is old and dilapidated, it's DC 6. This door has iron bands on it, it's protected, it's DC 14, right? Like you've got full agency and control over all of those decisions within the confines of the system, right? Obviously, you're not going to make the wooden door stronger than the iron door.
I hope
because that
not.
wouldn't make any sense.
Well,
and you could, but your players should call you up for that.
All you do is you retcon it and say, well, it's enchanted.
Yeah, there it is. It's magic. Obviously, it's the default answer.
Yeah,
that's enough.
It's magic. Sorry,
that solved the problem. So the other thing, so there was a massive shift. So when people talk about 5th edition, you go 3, 3.5, 4, 5. Well, the differences between 4 and 5 were vast. Because they shifted back closer to 3.5 than they did changing it from 4 into its own thing.
Right. Yes. They removed a whole bunch of classes.
The power system out the window.
Yeah, gone. The was it 3 actions? You got your major, your minor, and your movement. Yeah, basically. So you would have the
I have to struggle a little bit here with 4th edition, but the concept was still kind of the same. You would have in that case the major, minor, and movement. Now you've got a standard action, a movement action, and then a bonus and a reaction. Yes. Depending on there's an asterisk on that because some reactions use your bonus action.
Yeah.
There's scenarios. Some are free actions. Some
semantics.
Are bonus actions.
Who can be bothered to read the little print?
That's right. Does it rule of cool above all?
That's right. Yeah. Make sure everybody has fun. Who cares about the rest?
Right. Yeah. So I mean the shifts from 4 to 5 were great, but the shifts from 3.5 to 5 weren't as great. Something though with 5th edition that has always kind of struck me as interesting is that we got player handbook, Dungeons Master Guide, monster manual.
Right.
And that was it.
Yes.
Because all the rest were either flavor books and scenario books or campaign books.
Yeah.
Right?
Off the start. Yeah.
Guide to Wildmount.
Yep.
Candlelight Keep. All of these different areas.
The Sword Coast Adventures. Yeah.
But there was no Monster Manual 2.
No.
There was no, you know what I mean? Like, they never expanded that out, right?
Until later.
Even then, it wasn't like Monster Manual 2.
No, it was
like
was
the Tome of Foes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Volo's Guide to Monsters got basically reprinted as Monsters of the Multiverse.
That's right.
And completely changed everything in that book.
Right. And the thing is that if you aren't playing a multiverse campaign,
who cares?
A lot of those monsters aren't super useful to you, right?
Well, but it was also player character options in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. I personally grabbed. I think I've made 3 characters now from Volo's, and my last character I actually made from Monsters of the Multiverse because. And this is because of my little bit of min-maxing habit. The ability modifiers and were just better from the multiverse because you got to choose them.
100%. And so it's an interesting way of going about it because now it's 100% DM dependent, right?
Exactly.
As a DM, you may say, you know what? We're not allowing multiverse stuff in this campaign because this is not a multiverse campaign. Therefore, now that entire book has been closed to you, right?
Yeah.
Tasha's, maybe it doesn't apply to your campaign because it's not set into the world that your campaign is.
Wouldn't that be a shame?
Right? And so your standards are Player's Handbook, Xanathar's, Tasha's.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, you've got these kind of Eberron, you've got Wildmount, you've got, Sword Coast Adventures, you've got all these kind of different things that add backgrounds and class bonuses and different spells and
to be fair,
items and stuff like that.
Eberron added another race.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. Right. But I mean, like, if you wanted to play that race in a non-Eberron setting, now you have to talk to your DM and be like, hey, I kind of want to do this. And you have to hope that they're like, yeah, well, sure, I have no problem. And we haven't run into that problem before. Our DMs are incredibly open. They're like, if it's an official book, I don't care. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and
I would hope that most DMs are that way, but I know a lot aren't.
I would hope that most of them are that way. But yeah, I know. There are the outliers that they're the ones that get on the whatever thread that are like, DM horror stories or whatever.
We're in Greyhawk and we only do Greyhawk and that's it. So if it's not from Greyhawk, then get out of here.
Yeah, you want an automaton? You cannot have it. No, sorry.
That's right.
Yeah.
And story-wise, that might make sense, right? We played one campaign where Dragonborn weren't allowed. Dragonborn are not in this campaign because they are not in this world.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, Dragonborn's just cut right off the map, right? And so
we also played a campaign where Warforged not a thing.
That's true. Yep, that was also a thing too.
Yeah.
And so I mean that applies to any game. But what I mean is there isn't just like the core set.
No.
That like Monster Manual 2, Player's Handbook 2, like with 4th edition, they had Player Handbook 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And each one of those Player's Handbook added additional classes to the game.
Correct.
And that concept doesn't exist in 5th. What they chose to go instead is here's your core, and then Xanathars and Tashes.
Yeah.
And then here's these like setting guides, right? And in these setting guides, here's some additional stuff that exists in it. And then now you're at the whims of your DM, hoping that they would allow that, even though Eberron is not in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. So one thing I would point out is that the Player's Handbook is Player's Handbook 1.
Right.
Xanathars is Player Handbook 2.
Right.
Tashes is Player Handbook 3.
For sure.
Basically.
Yeah, we're talking naming, but
yeah.
It's up to this point, they've always been
PHB
1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we go way back. You got the Thieves book, the Fighter books, etc. But
that's
even in that
episode.
case, it's still. I guess what I'm saying is it was so generic.
It was, right? Yes.
Like,
yes, it was.
Xanathar's guide exists where Xanathar exists. If Xanathar doesn't exist in this realm,
there's no reason to have Xanathar's book. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
I don't mean to be on a point, right? Like, those are the default, and it's probably just in the titles. But
yeah,
it's just different. It's not bad. It's just different in the way that they decided to do it. I guess is what I'm saying.
It was, dare I say, refreshing.
Yeah, I like that. Right?
Yeah, that was. It was different enough to feel like a different system,
correct?
Rather than just 4.5.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, it gave it a little bit more character, and I think that's something that I really appreciated out of it, right? So, I mean, as far as it goes, the default 5th edition setting is the Forgotten Realms, right?
Yes,
like that is the default.
Wizards
right?
of the Coast
we still haven't gone past
loves
Forgotten Realms
the Forgotten Realms.
Well, I mean, it's got the Lord of the Rings feel to it.
They've loved the Forgotten Realms for the last 3 iterations, and D&D.
I get it.
One D&D is going to be the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, I don't.
Dragonlance and Greyhawk are they're the forgotten stepchildren.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going back to Dragonlance and Greyhawk. I think Greyhawk carries with it because it's Gary Gygax's thing.
It's a legacy of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think if they do go back there, maybe there's some legal stuff. I don't know. I wouldn't speculate in there, but I mean, there's got to be a reason why. The only thing that I dislike about still being in the Forgotten Realms is that 4th edition and the Spell Plague like destroyed everything. Yeah. And then here we are at 5th edition and they're like, yeah, the Spell Plague basically didn't happen.
Canonically, the Spell Plague has wiped out all magic. There's no magic left.
There's no magic here. And so here we are at 5th edition and they're like, yeah, there's a little magic.
Yeah, you can have sorcerers, you can have wizards, you can have artificers, you can have whatever you want. Yeah.
No, it was just funny because like they wrote themselves into a corner in 4th edition with the freaking Spell Plague, and then here we are 5th edition. They're like, we're just going to pretend that the Spell Plague didn't happen. That's not canonical.
It's
not
that alternate timeline.
It's just we're right. You get to some timey-wimey stuff
exactly
at this point.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. That's the problem with the Forgotten Realms is it's so ridden with history that
correct.
If you go and play in it, it's a completely different world than what maybe you want it to be.
For sure.
Like if you were going like from 4th into a 4th edition Forgotten Realms, right? Mm-hmm. Because there is no magic now.
That's right.
You get fighters, you get barbarians, and that's about it.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing left. It's just desolate, no more magic. And so I mean, like Ed Greenwood, master of settings, like just phenomenal. And like the whole world of the Forgotten Realms is like I said, I think it's as Lord of the Rings adjacent as you can get without being like and copyrighted,
yeah. Exactly. It's definitely got that old world feeling. Elves are mystical elves, you know.
Yeah.
The
dwarves are the underground.
The segregation between races is there.
Yeah.
There are no dragonborn in Waterdeep. Like. Yep. Exactly. I'd be remiss to not talk about the absence of the Red Wizards of Thay. Like, they exist, but they're not like front-facing centered. They're for the vast majority. Not the big evils anymore.
And like
they are
some of the coolest bad guys in all of the Forgotten Realms, just because they're just like these evil wizards, right? And I mean, the Dungeons and Dragons movie has them in it. Has like it's got like Zastam is the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
It's just I would have liked to have seen a adventure of some kind in the 5th edition world setting that would have had you going to take out something to do with the Red Wizards of Thay. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But we spend most of our time, Baldur's Gate, Candlelight Keep.
Because why wouldn't you? You
got
Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, Candlekeep.
Yep. Icewind Peak.
You go down the Sword Coast.
Icewind Dale.
Yeah, Icewind Dale. You got the whole Sword Coast to work with, but Faerun is huge. Like it's gigantic.
Really is. Yeah,
you hardly ever go off to the east side of the continent, like
that's
south.
What I mean. That's what I mean is that we focus so much on the west side, on the coast side of things, that the east side, you're going to previous editions for anything in there.
Yeah,
right? So
that also gives the DM places to go without having to run into the stuff that they don't want to run into.
Absolutely, yeah. That's the beauty with using Forgotten Realms, is that you have that back catalog of history that you can kind of make it work into your system.
Yeah.
But you just have to ignore the spell plague.
It's one minor plague. Don't worry about it.
It's just a plague. It's whatever. It's no big deal. So what, Finny, what would you say in regards to the system? Where is the system's bonus, like pros and cons, 5th
pros
edition,
and cons,
right?
5th edition.
Like, I mean, primary pro is it's the, like, if someone says I play tabletop RPGs, they're gonna say, oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Exactly. Like it is front and center, the poster boy for tabletop
the de
RPGs.
Facto tabletop RPG. It is the Superman of tabletop RPGs.
What I would say it does very well is it makes the player characters feel powerful. It makes them feel like heroes, because there's very little outside of the DM being very mean to them that will knock a player down and kill them outright.
That's right.
Like, they will conquer whatever you throw at them, because and this is one of the cons, the CR rating of the, which is the challenge rating of monsters to players, does not work.
It's way out of whack.
It does. It's
way out of whack.
Not even close.
Yeah. I picked up a copy of Matt Colville's book Flea Mortals, or MCDM. It's not Matt Colville's book.
No.
It is MCDM, the company that Matt Colville runs. But I picked up a copy of that Flea Mortals, and in it includes a way to develop a closer to the pin CR. And I started using that book halfway through our adventure, and I did find that actually got it a little bit closer to the mark. It's still not still not perfect.
It's not perfect,
right?
It helped, though. It helped get it closer, because Matt Colville, I don't know if you know this, plays a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. He deep dives.
He's old school.
Yeah.
He's been playing since day one.
So he actually went through and did the math and converted everything to make it work better.
Right.
Because with this, so 5e came out in 2014. That's 10 years old now at the time of recording. There's a thing called power creep that happens.
Yep.
And with Tasha's releasing, Xanathar's releasing, all these optional subclasses and powers within those subclasses all of a sudden your player characters are not, you know, what they were in 2014. They are now like double or triple as strong as they were.
They have to be cooler than they used to be.
Exactly.
Right? Like you can't just keep the same.
Cool stuff sells. So
cool stuff sells. You're going to buy Tasha's if you want that subclass.
Exactly.
You're going to want that subclass if it's cool.
And
right?
I really want that full class that Tasha's left out. Yeah.
So I mean, and so that I find myself when I'm working with 5th edition that I'm constantly reaching for supplements like that. I guess is where I was going with this.
Yeah,
is that I can't just rely on the core books alone. That I have to reach out like Matt Colville's one. There's who is it that does the monsters know what they're doing?
Kobold Press does a lot of like
Kobold Press does
all
a lot
the third party guys do a lot of work making that happen. And with that being said, you also get all of the third party content with that stuff too, which is not official, but but it's approved or whatever you'd call it, right? Like but that stuff is also if you do the third party adventures, they're geared and tweaked to run like just reading down the adventure as it goes. You don't have to adjust your monsters. You don't have to, you know, put special loot in there for your players to find to make them just a little more powerful to attack this creature, you know, stuff like that. And it's really, I didn't know there was so much third-party stuff for...
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of third-party stuff. And I mean, and obviously as the game, I was going to say as the game grows, but truth be told, as time goes on, because we're talking about a game that came out, you know, 70s, right? Like, we're talking about a game that came out way long ago. And so you have people who were fans from back then and all the way through. And not only the fans that were fans back then, but those fans had kids who also had kids. And that experience passes down through those generations as well.
Exactly.
And you grow your audience, you grow the folks that want to play this system in that manner, right?
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's obvious that this is the de facto default tabletop RPG experience, right? If you're talking board games, hey, we want to play a board game that's not Monopoly. Okay, how about Settlers of Catan?
Yeah,
that is Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah,
like, it is like this far off from the Milton Bradley board games, but it's also this far into where the rest of the board games go.
Exactly. Right? By the way, Monsters Know What They're Doing is made by Saga Press.
Saga Press.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's there's somebody that I was thinking of as like the Lazy DM or something like that.
Yeah.
Sly Flourish.
Sly
Flourish.
There you
That
go.
is the person that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
My bad. Sorry. Didn't mean to contribute the wrong book. Sly Flourish is also a really good creator of all things for that kind of stuff too, right? So yeah, and so I guess the thing for me, I think where 5th edition gets the absolute pro is we've been talking about it being the default. I think the pro about 5th edition is as they designed it, it is really easy to pick it up and play.
It is very easy for anyone to learn. The basic rules are you roll a d20 and the DM says you pass or fail.
I remember stepping into the DM shoes in 4th edition for the first time, being terrified because it was a daunting experience. There was a lot to learn. Everything's complicated. 4th edition was heavily focused on like miniature combat, so you had to know like all the combat rules and all of that stuff off the top of my head. 5th edition eliminates probably 50% of the complications that came from 4th edition, and it basically paints the picture as like, look, your job is to start the ball rolling, and as it's rolling and the players are pushing that ball, stand back and make sure they're not getting run over by the ball.
Exactly. You make sure it doesn't roll
That's your
backwards
job.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only thing that you have to do. We will handle the rest. Copy and paste out of these monster books, put them into this thing. Even easier, if you don't want to write your own stuff, take this one campaign book and literally read from this page to that page.
Yeah.
and run your game. The thing is, and this leads now into kind of my primary con with the system is it's just really average, right? It is. And let me put an asterisk on that, because if you have a really good DM, I don't think it matters what system is. I think a great DM will give a fantastic experience, and a terrible DM will give a terrible experience.
It doesn't
matter. But the
matter
beauty with
system.
5th edition, to now swing back into a pro, is that a really bad DM in 5th edition, you can still have a pretty decent experience playing that game.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know what they're doing, because the game is so handholdy and it's so like everything's kind of nerf padded that
it is, yes.
Even in the worst case scenario, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah. You're not going to be showing up to the session with 3 character sheets ready to go.
Yeah.
Very rarely do we have, even in our campaigns, we've had, a handful of deaths over 5 years.
So I was thinking about this exact thing. So out of all the character deaths that we've ever had, I think almost all of them were player decisions.
Yeah.
Example, wearing an invisible cloak, fall onto spikes without telling anyone where you're going and being silent.
Yeah.
You're done.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was just a bad call,
Yeah.
right? The one time that I dropped not due to my own fault was getting turned into stone by a Medusa.
Yes. And
I got dropped because I failed a skill check.
we knew full well that campaign was going to be rough.
That was going to be a rough one because it was not designed as a 5th edition campaign.
Exactly.
I think if it was standard 5th edition campaign, that wouldn't have happened.
No.
But even then, Medusa's still a two skill check thing, and that was what happened in game, and I blew those checks.
The
So,
Medusa
I mean, it is
is a rough
Medusa
enemy.
and Basilisk
Yeah.
are some of my most favorite evil things to throw out.
Those petrifies are like you said, it's a 2-roll save, and if you blow both of them, you're done.
If you're bad at rolling dice, that's a death sentence.
For those of you that don't know, DG has the trophy of a single dice with all ones on it because he rolls a lot of ones.
I roll a lot of ones.
Yeah.
I earned that trophy when I rolled 7 ones in one session.
7 ones
in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the outside of that though, I think all of the player deaths that we've had have been at the choice of the player, right?
Yeah.
Whether intentionally or unintentionally, the choice of the player was the reason why that player died. It was not because the DM set the game up too hard.
It was 100% player induced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I mean, you can always work with your DM to say, well, maybe I didn't die. Or maybe in my death, I made a deal with the devil and came back.
Taking a level of warlock
Yes.
on death is always an infernal pact is always a bonus.
Exactly. There's so many options, and the game it doesn't have strict rules for that specific reason.
That's right.
It gives the DM freedom to make the game as enjoyable as they want for their players.
For sure.
And themselves, because God knows the DM has to have fun too.
That's right. Yeah. And I mean, and that is a bonus with 5th edition, is that I, as someone who DM'd my campaign was almost 2 years long.
It was, yes.
I think as the DM, I also enjoyed that. Right. The frustration as a DM in that system was that there was times where I was like, they shouldn't survive this encounter. They're going to survive this encounter, but they shouldn't survive this encounter. Or at the very least, they should walk away
with their trouble. With their tails between their legs. Yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes I found that the make or break for an encounter was based on how far back was the last short rest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because your hit dice system that's in there, and that is brought in from 4th edition. Hit dice was still there. But I mean, taking a short rest and expending hit dice, especially as you gain levels, allows those players to keep going for a long time on a single, what is a short rest, an hour?
Yeah, short rest is an hour.
So I mean, on a 1 hour rest, which is, you might have a wandering monster, but it's unlikely.
It's unlikely at that time, yeah.
it's crazy how far you can stretch that, right? And certain classes have the ability to gain back spells on a short rest. A lot of the classes have the ability to get their abilities back on a short rest.
I was going to say
And
most of the martial classes, and our party was heavily martial on that, one. So we took a short rest and we gained back 90% of our abilities.
Yeah. And so it was such a refresh that all of a sudden you're coming now into a battle that was designed for you to be, weakened as you got to it, that you kind of were able to push through it a little bit easier. So the one thing for me as a DM, I found it was really tough to balance. Now, we did run a large party, and that played into it as well.
That does play into it a huge amount.
I think 5e plays best with a 4, maybe 5-person party maximum.
Most D20 systems do, unless an adventure is specifically made for a 6 to 8
large party.
Because when I DM'd for 5e, mini campaign, it was like 6 sessions long,
one shot.
It was specifically made for 6 to 8 players.
Right. It was designed that way
at a certain level. So
right
when the players came up against something, I had full faith that my monsters were going to stand toe to toe with these guys and give them a run for their money.
Totally.
Which they didn't, but
it never works out that way, right? It's always on the dice roll, especially as a GM. If you start throwing dice and you're missing rolls, it's rough. And then the players start, poking at you a little bit, like, oh, that was an easy one. I don't know. I mean, on the whole, to kind of wrap it up a little bit, obviously the reason why we chose this as episode 1 is because this is the vanilla ice cream, right?
Yeah.
From this point forward, things start getting more flavored.
Yeah. We're gonna dip into other things from here on out because D&D. We figured, we've been playing 5th edition for 10 years now. So we know it in and out, and rather than start on something complicated like Pathfinder. God.
Pathfinder's got a lot of rules.
Yeah.
A lot of rules in Pathfinder.
That episode's going to be rough.
That's a long one. Yeah. That's going to be a long one.
But D&D was going to be a real easy one, just to break the ice.
Yeah.
Kind of invite you guys in, tell you
introduce ourselves.
How this podcast is going to go and what to expect from future episodes. And I hope that we kind of set a good example as to what we're going to be doing from now on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun drive. So I mean, if this is up your alley, if you enjoy tabletop RPGs and learning about other systems, stick around for the ride. It's gonna be a lot of fun in the next upcoming episodes. Finn, I don't really have a whole lot to add. In addition, did we miss anything on 5th edition before we kind of wrap it? Shout out to Christopher Perkins and the team over at Dungeons and Dragons. I've been a big Chris Perkins fan, so let me throw one final little story in before we wrap it up.
Please.
So I started, like I said, into D&D, like actually playing it in 4th edition, and at the time when I had started playing, Chris Perkins was doing the celebrity DM thing before it was really like what it is now.
Yeah.
So he ran a session for the Robot Chicken crew, and you can probably still find it on YouTube. It's probably out there somewhere.
Right.
But there was a small video set of Christopher Perkins running a game of D&D for these people that played a lot of them for the first time. But they were playing 4th edition for the first time, and it was the crew from Robot Chicken, and it was a ton of fun. It was funny. And I was like, that's something that I want to do. I want to do what these guys are doing. And ultimately, that's what got me into it. So that's why I was like, you know what? I think I need to shout out to Christopher Perkins, because without that video, I don't know if I would have really even understood when we bought the starter set for 4th edition. So it came in a little box. It had a couple miniatures in it, or not miniatures. Yeah. They used little tokens or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little coin cut.
Oh, the tokens. Yeah. Not even standees.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. It was just a really cool experience, and so I mean, awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, sorry, Finn. Anything to add? 5th edition?
Super easy to pick up. Robust system to play with and hard to break because of home brewing and whatnots. Yeah, that's about it.
Get out there and roll some dice.
Get out there, roll dice.
Start a
only
group.
roast
5th edition?
Sorry. 1 on the dice is a natural 1. You suck. You just gotta you gotta suck it up and take that's an automatic fail.
Crits and fumbles.
20 on the dice is a automatic success, kind of.
With an asterisk.
Yeah.
For the most part. I think that's kind of
most
default.
DMs,
like in a D20 system, most systems use
most
that
most
kind of
DMs say, hey, you rolled a 20. This was a real hard thing, but somehow you did it. Whatever. I don't care. And I think that's about it.
I've never played guaranteed fail, guaranteed success with 1s and 20s, but what would happen, like someone wants to do something that they shouldn't be able to do, and I tell them that they shouldn't be able to do it. If I call for a check without telling you, like, no, this isn't something to do, and you still want to push the roll anyways, that is on a DM thing. The DM has to identify stuff that is not doable.
Yeah.
You don't call for a dice roll if they can't get it done.
There is
if they can't do it,
point
there is no reason to roll the dice.
Rolling a dice if it cannot happen.
Yeah. If they still roll it anyways, then it still doesn't happen, but with flavor.
Yes. You fall down the rope and you get tangled at the bottom.
That's right.
You're hanging upside down now by the one leg. Yeah.
But yeah, so to wrap it up, get out there, go play some games. 5th edition's a lot of fun. That's gonna do it for episode 1 of Masters of Pen and Paper. So I appreciate you if you got this far. Appreciate you listening to the podcast. Let us know that you're out there. Leave a comment or a review or whatever it is on whatever service it is that you chose to listen to us on. You can find me throughout the week streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/DGOnline. As well, this podcast and other videos will be posted up on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@DadGamingOnline. So yeah, come hang out with us and let us know what you think of this.
You can typically find me at DG's place as well.
Finny's hanging out with me as well. That's the best place to get a hold of him. And I'll put a link to our Discord server in the comments and stuff if you would like to chat
interact with us at all.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it for us. So thanks for tuning in. One last time. My name is Mike, and this is
Finny right here.
And really happy that you came along for this ride with us. Check us out in episode 2. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
So long, everybody.
Bye-bye.